majority of entrepreneurs don't have a clue. They don't have any idea what strengths, weaknesses their competition, direct and indirect, has. The only reason that anybody should be limited is their mind is limited. It has nothing to do with what's possible, and you don't need capital to do it. You just have to understand how to harness assets, access, opportunities, and really do the most with it.
Guys, help me welcome the one and only Jay Abraham. Jay, how you doing, man? So good to see you, dude.
Thanks, Stephen. And I hope you're equally as good. We're sitting, growing businesses and having a good time in California.
Man, I'm blessed, and I'm thankful to be here. I'm curious to know from your perspective, what do you think the number one skill to kind of really grow successfully in the 21st century would be right now?
Geez, I think it's, let's look. Can I give you a duality? I think the first has to be that your value proposition has to be superior to all the generic competitors that you're competing against, unless you're cheaper. So that's still a value proposition. Other than that, your ability to leverage up performance beyond that which everyone else does, your ability to market, advertise, sell, position, preempt, let's say monetize better, convert better, sustain better, have more ways to qualitatively retain the monetization in the relationship.
How much, you kind of brought the subject or the concept and even the tactical side of preeminence to the marketplace. Yep. How important has preeminence been in creating successful organization and helping people create the leverage you just spoke of?
Well, let's see. I taught it to Tony Robbins. I taught it to Damon John. I taught it to David Asprey of Bulletproof Coffee. I used it at Entrepreneur Magazine. I taught it to a company that went from number 9 to number 1 candy company in China. I taught it to a company that had 1 cosmetic surgery office and now has 87 in Japan. So I'd say I taught it to the assistant. I was doing it to the co-CEO of Keller Williams. I taught it to the guy with Planet Fitness. So I'd say pretty important.
Well, let's break down preeminence a little bit for the audience, if you don't mind, because it is such an important factor. I mean, it really is. It's such an important tool. I'd love to be able to kind of break it down for them just a little bit.
Let me give you the origin of it so that if I just don't go into the literal explanation of what it entails, people will understand why it's so important. 25 years ago, I had a client that I learned more from than I taught. I taught methods, but I learned more from them. They had a company in the publishing business that was 3 times more successful than their closest competitor. They were many more times than 3 more profitable. They had more premium priced products and services. They had a much longer retention and average purchase price and lifetime value. And the people that worked there were the most qualitative, impressive, driven, dynamic, collaborative, and purposeful, passionate people I had ever met. And so I did an exchange, Steve, and I traded them $500,000 of my services for the privilege of spending a week interviewing their entire organization, trying to reconstruct what it was that they were all about. And just to put it in even one more perspective, the guy that ran it, that was the architect of all this success, came from one of the very large private equity firms and investment banks. And he was a really brilliant guy that was a very, very brilliant PhD entrepreneurial type. So I spent all this time. And what happened was I got over 1,000 pages of notes. I interviewed management, employees, clients, everybody. And I distilled it into a thesis that I gave birth to, 20-some years ago. And I called it the strategy of preeminence. It is a combination of a strategic philosophy or philosophical strategy that becomes the core foundation of an entire business. It's the denominator of the culture. It's how you form your advertising, your sales approach, how you deal with your buyers, your team members, your vendors. And so that's the basis. So let me give you just the very short. It takes about 3 hours to explain it in its majesty, but I'll give you the quick short. So the first premise is you want your business, your company, your practice, your people, your products or services to be seen in the eyes of the market as the most trusted advisor your marketplace could turn to for life in the macro categories that your product or service delivers in. You want to be seen as the only viable choice they could turn to for what they want to do. The most trusted advisor, the only viable choice. The only way you can do that, again, according to my thesis, which has proven out pretty well, perspectives that are unique and decisively different than the rest of the maddening competitor crowd. Number one. Number two, to keenly and clearly understand the mind of the market. You have to be able to examine, appreciate, evaluate, understand, respect, acknowledge how they are seeing life and what drives them, hope, fear, motivation, because they are the ones you have to basically connect with, and you have to acknowledge that you understand them, you appreciate them. You have to be committed that your company, honestly, and what you do in the price point or the positioning renders a greater value and produces greater impact, outcome, result, benefit, advantage, enjoyment, entertainment, whatever the product or service does, than anyone else out there. And as such, if, Stephen, you believe that to be a truth, you have a moral responsibility, an obligation, and the privilege to try to reach as many people as you can, very least appreciate, understand, and evaluate your value prop, because they are going to be disturbed if they don't. And if you know that you produce impact, outcome, contribution, value above and beyond your competition, direct and indirect means other forms of getting the same outcome, you have a moral responsibility to do everything in your power to not let the competition get that business, not because you hate them and you wish they would die, but because the buyer will be disturbed. Another category is that the way to express most powerfully your message to the audience is through metaphors, similes, analogies, things they can easily relate to that they already have a historic, a clear-cut understanding of in other parts of their life. So you can show them that what we do in this field is like this in that field, or like this and that. And it's easy way to communicate. A very critical part of it is that you have to shift dramatically your passion and purpose. You have to fall in love, not with your business or with your industry or with being the fastest growing company. You fall in love with the clients you serve, and you live for the privilege of enriching them. You have a belief system that every time you interact with anybody for any reason, no matter the minimal amount of time, your job is to make them better off because they were in your life, not wait for money to change hands in order for you to start investing in the relationship, because you believe beyond all belief that it's only a matter of time before the people that should be dealing with you will. So you don't have to wait for money to change hands before you start contributing. You can't let people buy less than they should or more than they should unless quantity, quality, consistency, or frequency than they should, because you're disturbing them. You can't let them buy too much. You can't buy buy too little. At least you have the responsibility to make them keenly aware of the implication of buying too much or too little, and then they can do whatever they want, including not buy from you. I use the word client as opposed to customer. And the reason is very psychologically critical. People that call the people they sell to customers, if they look up the definition of a customer in Webster's dictionary, which I don't know if your people are all in North America or they're all use Webster's.
They're all over the world, but we have a huge chunk in USA.
Well, our dictionary, Webster's, I don't know what you use in some of the other countries, but a customer is merely somebody who buys a commodity or service. So if I call you a customer, Stephen, what I'm saying subliminally is that I'm no more than a commodity. I'm a marginalized provider of the same product service you can get from anybody else. And by the luck of the fate gods, if you condescend to give me your business over It's just fortuitous. There's no reason why. Reason why is a key driver of this as well. And probably the last thing I'll tell, because there's lots of elements to it, but the last thing is you have three categories of clients. Oh, excuse me, I didn't finish. A client definition is somebody who is under the care, the protection, the well-being of another. So it elevates the stature of the relationship in your own eyes and how you deal with that client. Now, the last thing is you have three kinds of clients you serve. The first and the obvious one are the ones that pay you. The other two are the ones you pay, your team members, your vendors. Mm-hmm. You have moral responsibility not to try to squeeze everything you can out of them, but to grow and develop everything you can within them so that they will grow more prosperous, more successful, more valuable. And the last thing, probably just in the quick distillate of it, is everybody needs to be on a crusade or a mission in behalf of the buyers that you're targeting. And if they're not, it suboptimizes. You got to get everyone mobilized and animated in the same spirit. That's pretty much it.
No, I love that. And I know everybody can dig in more. I mean, obviously, preeminence is something that's incredibly powerful to the marketplace. I want to come back to the competitor side for just a minute, because when I was an early entrepreneur, I'm talking 2-3 years in, right? I would see my competitors; they would have all the nice stuff, and here I am struggling to get by with what I've got. I'm doing what Tony would refer to as being resourceful, so much so that I literally built my scaffolding out of the trash piles, right? So there was this element of trying to understand what my competitors were doing well and not so well. But I also found myself almost going towards that, for lack of a better word, that, comparison scenario. Like, in other words, how do we evaluate our competitors to learn and gain perspective to better our own businesses, our own identities, our own self, rather than falling for the ultimate trap of they have stuff I don't have, so now I feel inadequate?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the more interesting insights that I I just fascinate by, Stephen, is that the majority of entrepreneurs don't have a clue.
Yeah.
They don't have any idea what strengths, weaknesses their competition, direct and indirect, has, why people buy from them don't, how they sell differently, what advantages, what their marketing says, how, they target. They just sort of go blindly into the world. I make sure that everybody I ever worked with knows everything they can about the people that are better, worse, different. They study people in their field, in related fields, outside their competitive market, in other kinds of ways of satisfying the problem. For example, if you sold a supplement for weight loss, you'd want to know what every other weight loss supplement does, but you'd also want to know what every portion control food provider, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, you'd want to know what every equipment maker, Peloton, people who sell Bowflex, just independent. You want to know people that sell personal training, personally, live, or vicariously. You'd want to know all these things so you could evaluate where you lie on the continuum, and you want to look for niches, because if you're not stronger, you better find an advantage. And if you're weak, you better figure out how to make yourself stronger or not compete in that arena. You'd want to see media you've never thought about, positioning you've never thought about, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. And, with several of my businesses, of the 7 are tied to construction related industry. And that industry historically, especially if you're working in the new construction side of things, it's historically been, recently over the last decade, more about price, more about trying to figure out what the value add. And I like the fact that you mentioned that alone is not going to be enough, and you become an expendable commodity. So if I take essentially what you've been teaching all this time, and I start to apply that to my business, what I'm going to be going to do in the marketplace is going out and learning from even people that didn't buy from me, why they didn't choose me to begin with. And then maybe some of those things would be different. Is that right?
Why they didn't buy, what they bought, from who they bought, why, and what the big motivators were other than price. And if it was price, why do you not have enough advantage to overcome price? Mm-hmm. I mean, use this as an example, and I'm not saying it with arrogance. I get paid, a staggering amount per hour. I mean, it's literally It's like 20 times. So it's more than 20 times. It's let's see. It's probably we get $15,000 an hour when my competitors oftentimes the generic ones get $300 an hour.
Yeah.
Well, got to be able to demonstrate an enormously value proposition if you want to charge basically 70 times more, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think that goes back. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I feel like early entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, people that are 5 million and below, that's kind of, I'm using that as a tool. So they're getting started or they have a good sized company at the moment and they're building. I think oftentimes it's really easy to get lost in the minutia of the marketplace where you're not able to take a step back and actually get perspective in these given areas. One of those areas that I've heard you talk a lot about specifically is also uncovering the hidden pain points within your own organization, within your own self, as it relates to, uncovering your blind spots and trying to create leverage from there. How does one actually go about, I guess, assessing where they really are in the marketplace? In other words, how do we stop the craziness and just stop them in their place and begin to give them tools to win?
Well, I think the first thing is really giving yourself permission that our society has imputed that we need to be omnipotent. I don't know anyone, certainly myself included, who's even close to perfect. I've got certain strengths. I'm very good in strategy. I'm very good in competitive areas, marketing, business modeling, revenue system optimization. I have no skill whatsoever in managing and hiring, in operations. And so I don't want to do it. But you figure out where you're the strongest, because if you don't operate in what I'll call your greatness zone, you're either operating in the magnificent part or the mediocre part. If you operate down here, it's very linear. There's no leverage. You want to operate where you have the most upside leverage. And to first do it, you got to do a reality check. What are you strongest at? What are you not strongest at? What does your company have asset resource wise? What doesn't it have? And then you've got to play to the strengths and you've got to compensate for the weaknesses.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show. Steven Scoggins here. I've got something that I think is absolutely going to blow your mind. Imagine taking your life and your business to the whole another level. I'm talking about an 8-figure level and beyond. You see, you've been working your butt off to build your business to where it is now. But what if you could work smarter, free up more time, make more money and impact along the way? How much would that be worth to you? You see, I can prove that basic steps, basic mindset shifts, and subtle changes can make the biggest difference. I want to introduce you to the 8-figure mindset makeover. It's absolutely free and it's here for you. It's a powerful summary of my top strategies that help propel me from the streets, if you will, to upwards of 9 figures and quote unquote success as we like to chase it. This is more than just tips though. It's a complete mindset overhaul with simple hacks that you can apply today to begin working on your unprecedented heights in your own business. I would like the honor to share these types of things with you that turn my dreams into reality so you can experience the same type of joy and freedom that I now get to live out in my own day. In other words, it's time for you to build your own unstoppable enterprise. And if you're really ready to take it to the next level and elevate your life and your business, this is an absolute game changer for you. So if you want to take advantage of this free resource, simply go to the show notes and click the link, or you can go to stevenscoggins.com/8-figure. That's stevenscoggins.com/8-figure. Until then, much love. God bless. Let's get back to the show. Take care.
Long ago, I realized that there is no reason that any business, any entrepreneur, any business owner, any startup needs to ever feel resource impaired ever again, because whatever you don't have, someone else has. And if you can figure an equitable way that you can get them to make those resources available to you in some participatory way, pay for it out of the results they produce, the money they make, the sales they make, the savings they make. And when you can do that, I've done billions of dollars for clients and for myself over the years who didn't have a lot of capital, but were able to tap into other people's resource base, buyer base, sales base, technology base, expertise base, manufacturing base, et cetera, and create explosive growth and success.
Now, are we talking, and maybe this is just one version of that. For our live event we've got coming up ourselves in October, one of the things that we're doing specifically is we're partnering with other industry leaders in the form of affiliates because they have an audience that I have yet to fully gain.
Yes.
But yet I have products and services that they don't have to market to their audience. Is that what you're talking about?
It's great. Yeah. I mean, that's one way. I'll give you another approach. I mean, years ago, one of the greatest success, I'll tell you a couple of them very quickly. So I'll tell you ones that people will resonate with. So many years ago, I used to go to China all the time, and I would help people in very qualitative entrepreneurial endeavors. And one time at a seminar I was doing for entrepreneurs, a young man came to the mic and through translation asked me, what do you do if you're too small and the bank will not lend you money to grow? And I asked him the question I asked always, what would you do with the money if you had it? Money. What are you going to do with it? If you had, tomorrow morning I gave you the money, what are you going to do with it? He said, I have a small local motorcycle manufacturer, not only in China, Stephen, where there might be 100 million population city. Could you possibly have a local motorcycle manufacturer? But he did. He said, if I had the capital, the money, I'd go all over Asia. I'd open up a factory. I'd hire workers to make my motorcycles. I'd hire salespeople to go all over Asia and recruit dealers and sell my motorcycles in 10 or 15 countries. And I said, okay, so what's the problem? And he goes, I told you the bank won't lend me money. I said, you don't. Your problem is always the solution to somebody's bigger problem. And I said, go on a field trip around Asia, find somebody in a non-competitive but a complementary business. Somebody who's doing something that relates to what you're doing but is not competitive, that has a large factory that's being underutilized, that has salespeople, dealers all over, and partner with them. And that took me literally, Stephen, a minute? I left and came back about 15 months later and did another seminar. And this man came back and he came to the mic at the end when we do question and answers, or we did. And he smiled like the Cheshire cat. He said, I did what you said, Jay. And I said, I don't even remember because I spent all my life answering questions, solving problems, untangling Gordian knots. He said, I went all over Asia. And when I got to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, I found Asia's largest lawnmower manufacturer. Very nice man. He said they had literally a massive factory. They weren't even fully utilizing second shift. They had dozens of salespeople all over Asia. They had thousands of lawnmower dealers. And we made a partnership where I brought to him the tools and dies. And if you don't know what that is, not you, but your people, those molds used to form different pieces of metal that you put together in assemblies that you put together and assemble parts or products. He said, I went and taught the factory workers that he hired how to manufacture. I taught his salespeople how to sell our motorcycles to both distributors and dealers, and how the dealers would sell the motorcycles, how the lawnmower dealers would sell them to their clients. And in the first year, we both made $10 million profit just from that money connection. I've done tons of things like that. A great story, which I think is pretty cool. Many, many, many years ago, everyone probably knows what Carnival Cruise Lines are. They're the largest, and they have 5 different brands all over the world. When they started, a friend of mine worked for them, and literally they had one secondhand ship. It wasn't a big one. They were so poor they could only afford, true story, to paint it on one side. They always brought the ship in on the painted side. So it would go out every week half empty or half filled. And if you consider it probably had 800 rooms back then and 400 were not being used, my friend who worked there when they had only one secondhand ship realized that was $400,000 a week, literally going down the tube. And he came up with a brilliant idea. He got the owner to let him call on hundreds, actually thousands of radio stations, television stations, magazines, newspapers, and trade them advertising they would run in their media for credits to be used on his ship. Now, that was brilliant because he had $400,000 a week in buying power he wasn't using. So he was able, times 52, that's $20 million, 30 years ago, which is $300 million today that he got free. But he did one more thing. he knew that if they used these credits right away, that would fill the boat. He wouldn't be able to bring any cash cruise clients in.
Yeah.
So we gave the media 2 years time that they could use these credits, but he used his advertising right away to bring in cash. And that's how they filled boats, and that's how they bought more boats. But I've got 40 stories like that of things you never would have thought. I'll tell you one more because I know you got a lot of startups here. Great story, and it's a true story, and it's a wonderful story. There's a man in Northern California who always loved Porsche automobiles. Now, I own a lot of cars, and I happen to have, as one of them, a Porsche convertible. They're really cool, and if you love them, you're in love with them. But this man couldn't even afford to buy a used one, but he loved them, and his dream was to buy a new one, but he couldn't afford even a used one. And he found out a small Porsche dealership was becoming available for repurchase. It was existing in Northern California. He didn't have a pot to piss in, but he went ahead and applied and got all the dealer documents and all the, the manuals and the regulations and the governing responsibilities and rules if you were a dealer. And he was reading through it, and he saw one little part that gave him a brilliant idea. It said, they might have changed it now, but this is when he did it, that a dealership, they could let anybody drive a new unlicensed Porsche with dealer plates for up to 3 months or 3,000 miles, and it would be able to be sold as new, a demo, on how many demos he could put out. With that one piece of information and no money at all, Stephen, he ran ads all over California, and the ad said, drive a brand new Porsche automobile every year for the rest of your life for a one-time investment of $75,000. He got over 200 people to send him 75 grand. He let them all, he used that to buy the dealership. The dealership cost $1 million down. With $500,000 more, he didn't give away 1 point in equity or dilution. He didn't have $1 of loan obligation. Half the people that he gave each one a demo for 3 months, kept them and bought them at a discount. They all became his referral sources. But I mean, when you understand that you have this enormous capability to use ingenuity you have to understand the opportunities that surround you. But once you do, I mean, it doesn't matter if you have no money. Doesn't matter if you don't even know how you're going to compete. I created a $250 million seminar business about 25 years ago when I was your age, just by partnering with Tony Robbins and Success Magazine and a bunch of business booksellers and a bunch of financial newsletters that all had direct trusted access to entrepreneurs, and they recommended and endorsed my programs. And we did $250 million, which is $250 million without any fixed investment. So, I mean, a lot is possible. I've been privileged to experience a lot on a worldwide basis, but I mean, there's no reason the only reason that anybody should be limited is their mind is limited. It has nothing to do with what's possible. And you don't need capital to do it. You don't need even a lot of skill. You just have to understand how to harness assets, access, opportunities, and really do the most with it. And I've got tons of stories like that.
No, I love that. And I love the fact you gave examples, because I think, that there might be someone listening here. He says, I got a decent sized landscaping company. How do I do this? Like, well, maybe you can partner with the folks that sell you mulch.
Yeah.
Or, there's some horizontal integrations and even some vertical ones maybe down the road.
Let me give you more that's,
yeah.
I'm not trying to interrupt you, but quite profound, and this will get people thinking. So many years ago, I realized the correlation between any kind of home improvement. Now, you're in businesses, maybe you sell home improvements, I don't know. But there's a phenomena that no one really understands until you start trying to look at correlations, implications, anomalies, associative connections, and relationships between one kind of a transaction and another. So if you talk to anybody, I mean, a group of anybody, get enough critical mass so that the law of averages work, who has ever done even one home improvement. The normal one's going to be a kitchen remodel.
Yeah.
That's a,
Sure.
So now you got this, say you have a 30, 40-year-old home, and now you've got a modern kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But then every day you come home and you look at this modern kitchen and you contrast it to this 40-year-old rest of the house. So what do you do next?
You start moving around.
Bathrooms.
Yeah.
And you maybe do the carpet and the walls and maybe the roof and maybe the garage door and maybe the landscape and maybe you do hardscape, which is patios, fireplaces in the back, and maybe you do a pool or jacuzzi or anything. But there's a strong correlation to when people that do one to doing many. So if you connect with doesn't matter, any kind of a home improvement company, their buyers, if they only sell one home improvement, are great prospects for any other kind of home improvement. So too are their non-sold prospects, because they probably went somewhere to do it. And if they didn't yet do it, all the better.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, I think it goes to show why your mentorship has been so effective with so many, let's just call it what it is, world changers. I mean, the people that you've impacted and that you've personally worked with have been world changers. I've got this piece in my heart about trying to create a legacy that outlives me, which you've done in spades. And so I kind of have a selfish question in that at some point in time, I myself would like to become what I refer to as a world-class mentor. And as a result, as a world-class mentor yourself to so many amazing entrepreneurs, and you've done so much, what does it take, or what can we learn now to begin working towards the process of becoming a world-class mentor that really assists others, advancement?
Well, the first is you have to put the other side's best interest ahead of yours always. The concept of adding value is a very overly worked and overly beat up concept. You can't wait for me to say, okay, how can I add value to you, Stephen? That's not the right question. It's knowing where you can add value and being able to demonstrate firsthand by connecting dots for somebody where that value is so they'll want it, and then truly being able to deliver it. And no matter where you are on the continuum, you start by producing a lot of successes and getting them documented, generate a ton of testimonials and case studies so that you can leverage them. If you can do it, every level of business performance has within it levels of influencers. Somebody who influences a $200,000 business probably wouldn't be the same kind of influencer as somebody who would influence a $200 million business. So find the influencers on a progression as you keep moving up your game on who influences the market you are serving now. Get them to let you contribute to them. Ask them to nominate people you can help and judge you accordingly so you can build a massive collection of testimonials, endorsements. And then you just keep moving up the food chain. That's what I did. And I had to work my ass off. People think you can do it overnight. You have to earn performance, not through rhetoric, but it's not hard if you can deliver. And if you can't deliver, figure out how you can. That's maybe a cold sounding statement. It's just pragmatic.
No, it's a true statement, right? I mean, if the reality is the influence you have in the marketplace and you've had for a long time now would not be there had you not super served other people and helped them with their initiatives.
Yeah, you can't bullshit.
Yeah.
And if you can deliver and you're the real thing, and the real thing is a relative statement. The real thing to somebody that your audience, I have great compassion and empathic respect for any entrepreneur at any point starting out small. But most people that are sophisticated aren't going to be the right advisor for somebody who's starting out because they don't have enough moving parts. They don't have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of capital. They're wearing hats. They have to pick and choose. And they need somebody who can get down in the dirt with them, so to speak, in the weeds and help them. But then as that entrepreneur grows to a larger, when you get, you've got them under 5. When you go to 10, it's a different. When you go to 20, different. Going from 20 to 40 million is different. 50 million above is different. They're different needs. But if your goal is to get to that point, you just cycle it through performance. And it's not just being discovered, it's going out of your way proactively and strategically, Stephen, to gain the awareness of the people who on the continuum have the ability to influence the target audiences you would want as you evolve and progress. And, I always would go to people when I was younger and say, look, you don't know me. I want to make a difference. I'm going to help you. I'm going to give me anybody that in the realm that I'm operating now that I can help. I'm not going to charge them, not going to charge you. If I don't perform, banish me from your kingdom. If I do, you're giving me the strongest endorsement and judge me accordingly on the results I deliver for you or others. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, but I think it's, even as simple as it is, I think it's scary for a lot of folks to put that risk out there. But I think it's because they're, for me, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like their identity might be tied to the wrong thing. It's not about actually proving results. It's about becoming known.
Yeah, but ultimately, you live or die. I mean, if I sell you my program and my program, there's two kinds of content. There's great content that people don't execute on, and there's crappy content that people work really hard and it doesn't work. If you've got great content that people don't execute, that's what we call normality, because only, frankly, about 5% of the people that ever buy anything do anything with it. Mm-hmm. Most people, tragically but truthfully, they look at expertise as intellectual entertainment. But if you've got methodology, IP, proprietary methodology, techniques that deliver madly if somebody works them, that's the first imperative. You need that.
Yeah. Speaking of a couple of programs that work really well, I know that Beyond Exponential has had a lot of success on its own in helping people. The triple play, matter of fact, I'm a big believer in all the work that you do. Like, obviously, where would people find that particular program? Because I think that's a great entry point for someone who is trying to break through, kind of get into some of the beginnings of preeminence and some other things. I think that's a great thing. Where would people find that at?
Actually, right this moment, probably the only way you would find it is communicating with my office, because we've only offered it limited to Tony Robbins' audience and a couple of internal ones, but we're getting ready. It's a new methodology that's taken me a lifetime to figure out, but basically it's a no investment, no risk system for taking profit performance literally beyond exponential. And it's got 50 different ways you can do it. And it shows people how to move everything they do from incremental to exponential and beyond. It's really cool. And it teaches all these different ways you can take anything you're doing and make it do more for you, faster, easier, more profitable, and safer. But it's not in the market formally now. You could connect with, I guess you could connect with our head of program admissions. That's probably an easy way to do it. His name is Calasante, and I can give you, is this recorded?
Yeah, this will be recorded. I can always put in the show notes as well if you guys are okay with it.
And he can tell everybody about it, because it's a wonderful program. There's nothing like it. And it's an infallible program if you work it. And we've put people into a 13-week experiment, and something like 65% had successes over 45% profit increases in the first 10 or so weeks. So it's pretty powerful. It's normally a 13-week program, but I've put together a 39-week extended salt, and it's a really cool version, but takes a long time to explain it. But if they're interested, tell them to contact our colleague who'll walk them through and see if it's appropriate for them.
Yeah, I'll do that. In fact, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and connect with the team. Your team has been very awesome in working with me and stuff like that, as you can imagine. It's clear they live and breathe preeminence and everything that's associated with it, because the culture is phenomenal. I'll make sure I get a appropriate link for them. And if you're okay with sharing that with the audience, I'll be happy to share it with the audience.
We'll offer it more publicly. I haven't yet. I've been using it for very high performing people, but it's a great way to take whatever you're doing and make it really explode your bottom line. And just for people's comfort, it's much easier, believe it or not, to grow your profit than your top line. Your bottom line not producing anywhere close to the results, the yield, the income, the level of success that your effort deserves. You just need to know how to do things differently.
I love it. Well, look, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me today. I can sit here and listen to you and be mentored by you all day long, hands down, with no problems. With one final question I have for you, though. What is the definition of unstoppable mean to you?
I mean, years ago, I was fixated with language patterns, and I had a very fascination with words like indefatigable, undefeatable, imperturbable. I mean, I think that setbacks, reversals, disappointments are a natural part of life, and they're even a more frequent part in business.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is, if you understand it, that when you were a child, a little child, you failed more times than you succeeded in your effort to learn to walk or talk. But if you think about it, one of my friends who's a former 3-time Super Bowl champion, Hall of Fame quarterback, Fran Tarkenton, wrote a book saying failure isn't permanent.
Yeah,
I think people take it too seriously and they take it too personally. And they make it about them. I mean, if you think about it, how do you grow if you don't try things? And the more things you try statistically, I mean, the more things you won't win at immediately. But if you look at baseball, I'm not a baseball enthusiast, but somebody that has, if you have a 400 batting, which is off the chart, you fail 60% of the time. I mean, that if you look at the athletes that in basketball that score 60 points, they probably miss, 3 times as many shots. I mean, it's part of human nature. Well, I mean, why take it? I think people take themselves seriously and they think it's all about them. Whereas if something doesn't work, it isn't even necessarily a failure unless you risk too much on it, which you don't have to. You can mitigate and moderate risk, but anything that doesn't produce the results you're after tells you to shift and pivot and go a different way.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that for sure. It's interesting as I've kind of grown as an entrepreneur and as a man in general. I've learned that the main part of our culture likes to celebrate success. I, however, like to celebrate the sacrifice. I like to actually know that someone has been through something, overcome something, and come out on the other side because they didn't give up, because they did pivot, they did try. I find that those stories are incredibly inspirational to a variety of different people in all walks of life, even if they're not, necessarily getting a piece of content that maybe directly overlays with what their struggle is, as a rule of thumb. So I love that. I love that so much. Well, dude, I have, I could sit here and talk to you all day. I really could. I so enjoyed the conversation. How can everybody else find more about you?
If they have very limited budgets, they can either go to Abraham University, which has very modest priced programs for people that are smaller and unlimited budgets. They can go to abraham.com, and it has a lot of entry level, really great, no cost materials and resources. If they're big and they can afford a very large fee, they can contact me at j@abraham.com. But most of them should just probably either go to, if they're big enough and they want to learn how to grow their profits beyond exponential, go to the link you'll give them. If they want to just get a small, very modest investment, they should go to Abraham University. If they don't want to invest at all, go to abraham.com.
I love it, Jay. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, man. I really appreciate you big time.
Pleasure. Very best of luck to all of your entrepreneurs. I hope this stimulated more expansive thinking and, more important, a different a degree of action. Thank you very much.
I know it did. Take care.
I hope you liked that video. And if you did, make sure you check out this next video right here.
We all have reasons. We all have reasons to quit, and we all have reasons to keep going. And the reasons that you choose will define you.
Yeah.
And I teach in the book the process. The process is 3 words, super simple. It's dream, struggle, victory.